Hey everyone, how you doing? So does it sound okay? I was using a different microphone today.
Oh,
Microphone
you
in it?
sound fine. You sound fine.
Good, 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 good. So before we start, and Russ is going to be here shortly. I got a lot of stuff to talk to. I want to bring out one little basic thing that I believe is true beyond a shadow of a doubt, Mike, and that is the most underrated arcade game from the '80s. Okay, so I know we talk about it. I have an '80s arcade love. I have 32 machines now.
Yeah.
And then I have like memes that include every game ever made. So I have every game ever made probably in here. And
Right.
the last 4 nights, I have not been able to sleep. And I've been up from like 2 till 4 in the morning playing one game. And it's like I think it is maybe the most underrated game because it's not like I'm a Pac-Man freak. I love that. I know
See,
you're.
I Pac-Man. See, the thing was, everybody knows Pac-Man was patterns. If you remembered the pattern, you could go to like
Yeah,
board 40, and I could never remember the pattern because it bored me. It just put me to sleep. So
it was tough after like the pattern was so rewarding for a person like me. I don't know why. I just like that. There's something about it. The first book I ever read was the Pac-Man, How to Beat Pac-Man. I had like the first 12 screens, like up to like this,
was chapter 2 of that book the how to do the Rubik's cube.
How to Never Date Anyone. Basically, was the second one. Yeah, How to Do the Rubik's Cube is
you're
the second book I read.
you're married and I'm not, so
I
obviously.
know, but it took a while. I was
Okay,
30, but so Pac-Man's not your game.
no.
Pac-Man is I used to obsess over being the high score keeper of the Pac-Man at 8th and Boardwalk in Ocean City, New Jersey every summer. I had to have that. And I would have people when they would go there, I'm like, go to the 8th and Boardwalk and tell me if the score is still 234,362. I remember this still to today. If they was, yes, it is. I'm like, great. If they said, no, it isn't, I would get in the car and I would drive.
Okay, so you're asking me to guess what I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. What do you think? What do you think are some of the least, the biggest underrated games?
Well, and I think you know this because I think you had it
Mm-hmm.
when I was visiting at your place. I've always been a fan of Dig Dug, and that wasn't a big one. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, Dig Dug was, which is basically you're digging basically under the earth, under like rocks, and you have these little
Yeah.
things chasing you. I mean, that was always like I always liked Dig Dug a lot.
Definitely was underrated too because it wasn't in that big world of like asteroids,
Yeah, it
Centipede,
wasn't Space
Pac-Man,
Invaders or Asteroids or
right?
Galaga. Those are all big games.
Centipede I put in there too.
Centipede. Centipede. I was a big Missile Command fan.
Missile
Uh,
Command is funny because Missile Command I agree. When Command came out, I was huge into Missile Command. But playing it now, it does not a very interesting game anymore. I don't know why. For some reason.
well, nothing is interesting
No, no,
compared.
no, it's not true. That's actually not true. There are
Yeah,
games that are still
I love Asteroids, but
Asteroids is still great. Deluxe Asteroids, did you get into that? Because I started playing that the other day a little bit. You're probably like, old school Asteroids only type of guy, right?
yeah.
Do you remember what they did for Deluxe Asteroids? Remember how they made it deluxe? They had a colored screen that went over top of the regular black and white screen, so it wasn't really a color thing. It was just had to be color in certain areas because
I'm an OG Asteroids mother. Remember Galaxian was the
yep.
forerunner or the precursor for Galaga. Yeah, Funky in the chat. Gorf. I loved Gorf.
Gorf was cool because it was like a combination of a bunch of different games. It was Galaga. It had Space Invaders on it, and then had these other levels too. I recently got one of the better games from the late '80s, early '90s, Tron. But
Oh yeah, I remember
the
Tron.
Tron is a boring game to play. It just looks amazing.
Yeah, it's a boring game, which came from a boring movie.
Yeah.
So it was like, I played it and I'm like, what the hell is going on? I mean,
Yeah.
and by the way, Timothy, you've never heard of Dig Dug, and no, the game that I remember was Pong. So that's how old I am.
Well, I recently got a 4-player stand-up Pong game, which is really awesome because it's like a table, and you stand around the table and you can play each other. You can play straight up Pong. You can play Breakout on it. I just Warlords. Remember Warlords at all? Do you remember Warlords? Warlords was like a Pong type thing where you had at a corner to defend. You basically defended a corner, and so there were 4 of the balls would bash all around. You had to keep it from breaking through into your corner. That was Warlords. That's fun. That's a Pong type.
I can't remember the name of the game, but it was a helicopter game where you would strafe people, or you'd have to pick up people.
Yes,
off the
yes.
ground.
Oh man, it's not Zaxxon, which I know you like too.
Xavius is the one I
Xavius,
like.
that's it. Xavius. There you go. Yeah, Xavius. That's a great game.
Yeah.
Well, the game. My favorite all-time games are Pac-Man, Q*bert, which I love. Q*bert's very rewarding. Very fun to play. I mean, I have Q*bert. I also have Battlezone, which is a fun game, which was the game that you actually had like a thing you held like this and you look through it and it was all that's really cool.
I like Donkey Kong, Terry. That's a good one.
Donkey Kong I never liked because it's so friggin' hard. It's a very hard game to play, Donkey Kong.
How about here's another one, Frogger. I loved Frogger.
Frogger, basic and simple, great, great Seinfeld episode too. But Donkey Kong Jr. is my wife's favorite game, and she's fantastic at it. That is actually way better than Donkey Kong, I think. But there's a great movie called The King of Kong. If you ever get a chance to watch, have you seen that movie?
No,
it's called King of Kong, and it basically profiles a guy who like loses his job in the 80s and decides that he's going to buy a Donkey Kong machine and become the best Donkey Kong player in the world. And lives out of his garage and goes to the Donkey Kong championships and how crooked it was and how political it was. It's a crazy story. It's bizarre, but this was all the 80s. There were like 2 or 3 guys in the 80s who like ruled, who had the best high scores in like most of the games. They were just the incredible gamers. I never heard about them at the time personally. I was a kid, but
now when I work, and this was around 85, I started working at the movie theaters, and they had video games. And of course, when you worked at the movie theaters and they had video games, the ushers or the managers emptied out the quarters and go in and press the free plays. So after all my work was done, the manager would give me the keys when I was an usher, and I could go in and put like 60 plays and play Super Mario Brothers 2. Which the first Mario Brothers blew. The second one was pretty good.
Yeah, Super Mario Brothers 2 on the arcade was good. Mario Brothers on this Genesis on Nintendo was amazing. But there was even better the free play thing. A friend of mine, Dave Katz, who was also an ice hockey goalie before I was an ice hockey goalie, when I couldn't afford to be an ice hockey goalie, when I was a street hockey goalie, and I would get all of his old equipment. Dave Katz is also, I think, watches the show, so he might be out there listening. He's a great guy. Anyway, Dave is one of my oldest friends. He taught me this trick of how to get a game for a penny from Asteroids and Space Invaders. There was a flaw in the game where if you went and I tried this the other day because I was in an arcade and I saw it and it still works. It's crazy. So if you reach into the coin returns underneath the coin return thing where the coins would come out, you grab a penny, you shove it, you throw it up as fast as you can, like just try to flick it up. Then there's little slits in there. You can flick it between these 2 slits. If you can get it up there as fast as you can trigger that little lever in there, and which would be triggered when a quarter would fall down, and get yourself a game for a penny. And I mastered it. So I would go with. You had to be careful because if anyone was looking in the arcade, if any of the people who were working the arcades saw you do it. But I got to be a master at doing it incredibly quickly, and I got really good on Asteroids from it.
We busted a kid who basically had a quarter. And super glued.
Oh no!
Yeah, super glued a piece of metal, like a very thin metal, like about the width of like a cassette tape. The tape, like maybe an eighth of an inch. Taped it to the quarter, dropped it down the slot, and then pulled the quarter back.
Nice. I've heard of that, but I thought it was a myth. I didn't know it actually could be done.
I saw it.
That's pretty crazy. Punch Out, Funky says in the chat room.
Yes. And my problem with Punch Out is I barely got past Piston Hurricane. Bald bull, with his fat head.
That's impressive, Mike. I like that. These are good names to pull up.
There was Glass Joe.
Glass Joe, who my son went as one Halloween. That's how weird we are around here. Glass Joe. What is Glass Joe? The worst character in Punch Out.
It was Glass Joe, Piston Hurricane, and then Bald Bull. And Bald Bull always say, "Come on, come on!" And,
Bill Zito.
Anyway,
Blades of Steel. Okay, a big debate on that game for me. I'm a Hat Trick fan, which was like a one-on-one. And then Nintendo hockey, just ice hockey, the first Nintendo ice hockey with a big guy, little guy, small guy. Best two hockey games in my world. But Blades of Steel, very overrated. I felt like Blades of Steel, if it wasn't for like the got the glass or whatever it was, or hit or whatever it was, they hit the little things. But anyway, just to shorten this, make a long story short, if that's all possible.
Let me just say one thing.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of the game, but it was in the famous Swingers movie with John Favreau and Vince Vaughn. Somebody will know it in the chat. And then the best thing about that game was
NHL '94. That was.
Yeah, okay. Was the fact that Jeremy Roenick could make Wayne Gretzky's head bleed. That was great.
That was the 1 year Nintendo and NHL '94, and I recently did Hockey Buzz about 2 years right before the pandemic. Sponsored a tournament at a casino in Pennsylvania here, where a guy had an NHL '94 tournament for charity where people could come and play that game, and he had like a couple big screens with NHL '94, and Hockey Buzz sponsored it. And I went down and I played. Cap Neo played because Cap Neo and I we were literally those characters playing that game from that movie. That was Eric and I back then. And
what was the game?
It was NHL '94. It was called. And it was on
the game that you thought was the most the
most underrated. Yeah, the most underrated game of all time. And this is like there's no question about it in my mind is Robotron. Do you remember playing Robotron at all? Anyone in the chat room should remember it.
Yeah.
The concept of Robotron was you were this guy in the middle, and all these robots were coming from all different sides. You had two. There were no buttons, just two joysticks. One joystick moved you, the other joystick fired in any direction. So that's all you did, and it was such a crazy fun game to play.
Yeah, I'm looking at a picture of it. I don't remember.
You remember it?
It looks sort of like a Galaxian type of game.
No, it's not, because it's more like you're a guy running around, and these things are coming at you from all angles, and you have to shoot them, and you can shoot you can run in any direction and shoot in any other direction. So because you have the two joysticks, the control of it is just so much fun to play, and it's very much like I was a quarterback in when I was growing up in high school, and the idea of you're basically scrambling the whole time. Like you're a scrambling quarterback trying to get away from these guys. And it really reminds me of like Fran Tarkington. So anyway.
Yeah. Sorry, Johnny Red. We'll talk hockey in a second. I was just going to say one of my favorite games that was basically a rip-off of Galaxian or Galaga was something called Moon Cresta. It was
yes, Moon Cresta is good. That's a good one.
3-stage rocket. And of course you'd get all three stages, and then your rocket was so damn slow that you'd get picked off. But
there's no shortage of games that tried to rip off Space Invaders, by the way. Mooncrest is one of them better known, but there are so many. Phoenix. Remember Phoenix? There was a bunch of different ones.
I liked Phoenix.
I liked Phoenix too.
Yeah.
But anyway, we'll talk hockey, guys. But come on. We're just having a little bit of fun here. Anyway, here we go. Let's get into the hockey news. All the hockey news is fit to be talked about. And Russ will be joining us in just a little bit. Hello, Hockey World. It's Thursday, January 20th, 2022.
I'm Michael Agello, and today is not Inauguration Day.
No. And I'm Eklund, and you're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world, now with less baseball talk. Anyway, just for today.
Well, there's no baseball talk because there's no baseball.
So right. I secretly want to do an arcade podcast, obviously, just like we want to do a prog rock podcast. Anyway, these are my passions. But let's get into a couple things, and where to start? Where should we start?
Johnny Gaudreau.
Yeah, let's start with Johnny Gaudreau, because I'm in the middle of putting the rumor chart together now, and it's that means I'm talking to every source I've ever met, every person I've ever known, and Gaudreau is a guy who I know I have connections to Gaudreau. Like he lives in the area. He grew up near where I grew up, and that was like there was a strong feeling, of course, as this season began, and Flamester, our buddy in the chat room, will tell you that Gaudreau, this was it for him. This was the final season he was going to play in Calgary for sure. No questions about it. His numbers have been declining in the last 2 years, had really kind of like bottomed out a little bit, to the point where he had like 49 points in 58 games or whatever last year, which was low for him. Or maybe even less than that. But anyway, his numbers have gone down considerably. But now, all of a sudden, with the combination of the flat cap and teams not having a lot of money, and there being some other players that maybe is slightly more appealing to people out there that in the free agent market, and when it comes to UFAs, there's serious talk about Gaudreau re-upping in Calgary. He's having an unbelievable year. I mean, let's just face the fact that he is. Last year I predicted, if you remember, one of my crazy wacky predictions last year was that Gaudreau would have this major bounce back season, and as is normal with me, I'm a year ahead, which is like something that if you go look at my predictions, I tend to be Sorokin. I tend to be a year ahead on things. So Gaudreau this year is having the year I thought he'd have last year, and next year, Mangiapane will have the year I thought he would have this year. But that's the reality. So you might as well just go to the bank with it. Gaudreau is playing well. He's fitting perfectly. Sutter's system is right. Just a perfect fit in there with what's going on with it. He's getting his ice time. Him and Lindholm are just ridiculous. That combination has been, they're both in the top 15 scorers in the NHL. And Gaudreau is number 10 right now in plus minus in the NHL, plus 20 now. And he's not like, you never think of Johnny Gaudreau as a defensive, stalwart. So he's having a year, to stop all years. And Calgary is as well. And it looks now to me, when I talk to people that, Gaudreau is going to return to Calgary. And I just think that is a bit surprising. And is it smart for Calgary to do this? I mean, is this a case of a guy playing for a contract, or what do we trust here?
Well, I mean, he's at that age where, he's 28 now.
Yeah.
And the thing you have to be scared about is the back end of the deal. I mean, if you're going to go 8, then you're going to, it's going to be basically for a lower cap hit that you stretch out the AAV over 8 years. Now, I don't think they're going to do that, because do you really want to sign him through age 37?
Yeah.
They don't have a lot of cap space, and they have Matthew Tkachuk coming up. Now, does that mean that, because we've heard the rumors about Tkachuk wanting out of Calgary, does that mean, I don't know if they're based in fact or not, but if you sign Gaudreau, are you going to be able to sign Tkachuk? Tkachuk's having almost as good a year. He's averaging a point per game.
Yeah.
But he's 23 years old, and Gaudreau's 20. That's the thing. You may have to decide between the two. I don't see a great deal of space that you can create here looking at the roster. I mean, guys like Tyler Pitlick and Trevor Lewis, Zadorov and Erica Branson are UFAs. So you're not going to open up really a bunch of cap space. So I don't know. I mean,
I do think that there is absolutely something to Matthew Tkachuk wanting out of Calgary. I think that is the case. Hey, Russ.
Hey.
You missed our exciting arcade discussion, but we'll talk to you about it later. So there's something about I do think there's something about Tkachuk wanting out of Calgary. I've talked to people who, obviously grew up in the St. Louis area, and I've talked to sources of mine in the St. Louis area who say that Tkachuk, when that's where he still goes back when he's on it, and that he just really wants to be a St. Louis Blue. That is something he matters to him, not necessarily as much. Brady Tkachuk would love it too, but not nearly as much as it seems as Matthew wants to be there. Like Matthew Tkachuk really wants to be a Blue. And we're talking about the fact that Gaudreau is looking like he could be re-upped in Calgary. And if that's the case, like Mike said, does that mean Tkachuk could possibly be moved?
I could see it.
Yeah. I mean, how good is Matthew Tkachuk? Really? Like, where is he? Is he absolutely?
He's 20, 25 goals a year. He's a guy who is hard to play against.
Yep.
He's a guy that's an a-hole on the ice. And, again, it's like it's easy to throw around the term, just toughness. He's more than that. He's the toughness, but a guy who could also score.
He's a power forward.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there would be like 10, 12 teams that would kill themselves to get a guy like Matthew Tkachuk. I mean,
definitely.
Now,
he's a rarity for sure, but he's not a top line power forward. To me, he's a second.
No, he's not. He's a second liner.
Yeah, I mean, I think
his plays dropped a little.
He's not Brady. He's also not Brady Tkachuk, right? Like he's not.
No, he's not Brady as far as skill goes.
He's a second liner on a Stanley Cup winner. He's a really
well. That's where he'd be going, right? So
yeah.
But okay, say for example, we're talking Calgary and St. Louis, and Matthew Tkachuk says, "I want to go to the Blues." He's a restricted free agent, so they'll qualify him, so that he can't go offer sheet wise. If you're talking about a trade, then what are you talking about? Are you talking about a Robert Thomas or a Kyrou or somebody like that? Because that's probably.
I mean, it could be Perinovich and a lower level prospect. It could be Perinovich. Maybe they want Hofer as a backup if they're going to someday move Vladar. Who knows? Because Vladar is, I think, only a 2-year deal. So maybe they go Hofer. Maybe they go Perinovich and a first.
Yeah. I can see that. And I think, I mean, it does feel weird to me that Gaudreau is only 28. Like it really feels to me like he is 30.
I get that.
I mean, at least 30, at least, like it's weird. Like, and when I see he's 28, this is his big contract to sign, right? Like this is it. This is like the big, and it feels like he's already had that contract, didn't he? I mean, he already signed a really big contract, I thought.
No, it was like for like $5 million. This one.
But when he signed, it was quite a while ago too, right? So that was 6 years ago. So anyway, he I do wonder a little bit because he is just playing better in a contract year. And as much as I know, I know Johnny Gaudreau. I have coached, and my friend of mine, Dan Wallace, coached him, and I've hung out with him and talked to him about it. And, so I think Gaudreau is an amazing player. I don't know. I just don't trust guys when they have this kind of year right now, like in this sort of situation sometimes.
I mean, listen, again, people have made way too much about some of these off years for Gaudreau. Like the guy's a really good player. He's a top 30, 35 player in the league. He is.
Yeah, no, I think so too. I mean, he's definitely one of the fastest players. He's one of the most explosive players. He is, at times, just one of my memories of the World Cup of hockey with him on that crazy team, on the crazy under 23 team, I guess it was at the time, or when was he on that team, or he was on that team. Yeah, he was definitely on the team, right? Gaudreau was on that team for the World Cup of hockey. Gaudreau was on the North American World, whatever, the under 23 team.
Yeah, I think he was actually.
He was just right on the edge of it, but he was definitely there.
Yes.
And I mean, he on that team. When you saw him playing with other fast players, you realize he's still fast, even with fast players. He does things.
Oh, he's still fast.
He does things at a great speed, and just really was a real game changer in that series at times.
He hasn't really lost anything. I watched him this year 3 or 4 times. He's looked really good.
Yeah. So Gaudreau was 6.75 for 6. One more, that's what Randy in the chat.
I could answer this draft question that's in the chat room at the end of the show. So
okay, we'll get to that for sure. Remember that. So I think now I'm really starting to get the sense, though, talking to people in Calgary, that Gaudreau is going to extend there and not going to be moved, which is a big shift in their thinking.
That is
because he seemed like the natural guy to move because his numbers were diminishing. But this year he's back on like his.
Well, you want to know? I'm going to tell you what a part of that is. The fact that the Flyers stink helps make that a possibility.
Yeah.
If the Flyers were going to be good, Gaudreau might have still had interest in going there. He's not going to have any interest in going there now.
Now, what could?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, I don't know with him. I'm not. Well, I still think that he's got a little bit of like you saw what like.
Well, even the Devils. The Devils still stink too.
Yeah, but he wasn't the Devils guy. He's the Flyers guy. Alex Tuch. Like what we've seen in Buffalo, there are some players that just really want to play in their home team.
Alex Tuch.
But I think Tuch wanted to play there more, than Gaudreau in Philly.
But
that's very possible.
But and Randy Flamester would probably verify this. What could be in the works when it comes to how you open up cap space to sign Tkachuk and to re-sign Gaudreau is you trade Sean Monahan, because Sean Monahan is having another bad year. He's only got 18 points in 35 games. He's got the worst plus minus on the team. He's got another year at $6.3 million. And even though he's had 2 bad years in a row, every team is looking for centers, but you're not going to get a ton for him, and you're probably doing it only to clear a cap space. That might be.
They're going to lose on that deal. I just think he's not fitting in with Sutter. I think you can't. He's not a great defensive player. He never was. Nope. But you could get a lot more offense out of him somewhere else. You can.
Yeah, and their answer probably internally is, you'd have Elias Lindholm and Coleman as your 1-2 up the middle, and
right.
and you're strengthened on the wings, and that works that way. So
yeah. So I mean, it's something to watch. We're gonna keep an eye on it for sure. But I think that I think we could see him return, and I do think that Matthew Tkachuk could be. I mean, I really have heard. It's funny how there are some people in St. Louis that you talk to that feel it's a foregone conclusion that he's going to be a Blue soon, and that those are some of those people are like guys who cover the team on a daily basis. Like not, and it's really like a couple of newspaper writers I know down there, same kind of thing. So it's kind of crazy, really, really, really
Well,
crazy.
there's two reasons I think for that. The one
Mhm.
thing I do want to mention is the fact that Connor Zari's getting close, another
Yeah,
center,
yeah,
is a reason they could do this. The other thing is Keith Tkachuk is probably telling them that. Keith Tkachuk's
yeah.
still with the organization. That's
True,
why they're getting this information.
true,
I spoke to
true.
Keith Tkachuk when he was at the Stanley Cup. So come on.
Yeah, and Keith is not like tight-lipped. Has never
He's
been
not
tight-lipped.
afraid to talk.
No, he's never
No.
been. Even when he was a player, I remember one of my favorite moments ever doing this was when Andy Strickland came to town with the Blues. My first year as Eklund doing this thing, and he tells me that he tells me that Kachuk and Guerin have to meet me. Like they have to meet you. They want to meet you. We got to come into the locker room. They don't believe I know you. I was surprised was stupid things like this, So I go in there and man, they both love talking rumors. Oh my gosh, those guys are two guys that they love discussing rumors, and that's why I thought when Guerin became a GM, it was so pretty awesome because he loves this game. He loves the trade deadline. These are guys who
He does.
They want to know, like they wanted to know what was happening next for me. What I know that I wasn't writing. It was really funny. They were so fired up. So yeah, Kachuk that is in Keith Kachuk's world for sure.
So
no question about it.
So, Russ, we saved the Ranger Leaf talk till you got here.
Before we get to that, though, Mike, one quick thing.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the Flyers and Devils for a second because
I'm
hearing more and more as the day goes on that we could see a change in one or both of the organizations very soon. Flyers, of course, have lost 9 in a row. Tonight they play Columbus, and that's the
with
kind
Jake
of game
Voracek playing.
If Voracek is playing, okay. That is the kind of game that you simply. I'm not going to debate. It's over, Mike, with the Flyers. But today they play Columbus. The reality is, this is a game that they absolutely have to win. Like there is no, if they don't win, and last night was a game the Devils absolutely had to win, and they didn't. They lost to Arizona last night.
Yeah, they had to win that.
So when I heard this, when I saw last night, and then I started immediately talking to Devil sources right afterwards, it's very apparent that Lindy Ruff is at the end of his rope here. Is that
Is anybody shocked at this?
No, I mean it's really
we said when Lindy was hired there that was the wrong fit because you had a young team, and we know from Lindy, from Dallas, from Buffalo, he works better with veteran players.
Yeah, and there does seem to be we have seemed to reach the time when the Lindy Ruffs and the Elaine Vigneaults and the Ken Hitchcocks don't work anymore. I mean, it feels as if this is a young man's game. Like that there's a new style of coaching, that there's a new style of player, and that the player responds to a different style of coaching than that, and it's just. Lindy Ruff,
Bill Peters found out you can't kick players on the bench anymore. I mean,
right. You can't do this. I mean, we have seen these great coaches like Paul Maurice or people like these guys who are, who have been out there forever, fail this year, and a lot of them, and in epic ways, like in big proportions too, like Maurice.
Yeah, but in Maurice's case, he was burned out. I mean, he was. He said it in the post resignation media conference.
Yeah, no, he did, and I respected that, Mike. But at the same time,
he's a smart guy. He's a smart guy, and I don't think the game has passed him by. I would say that. Listen,
I mean,
I think there's systematic problems in Winnipeg. I still think that.
I think there's systematic problems with Paul Maurice, and just from talking to players who played for him, there are players that absolutely can't stand it. Like to a level.
No question. That's why when we saw, that's why when his last ally left off of injury, he was gone because there are definitely guys that got tired of him.
He is not.
Blake Wheeler is who I was thinking.
He does not play
Like-
fair. A lot of players will tell you, like, he is not the kind of coach that he's just not a player's coach, even though he acts like it to a degree. He's a media friendly coach that's not a player friendly coach, which is rare usually. Like usually that combination.
Yeah, that's true.
Usually that combination, like, you know, like you see in Tampa or situations like with Cooper, where guys are media friendly and they're also player friendly. He was two different. He was one person in the media, and he was definitely a different person to the players. So,
Well, that's how Alain Vigneault is that way too.
Alain Vigneault is very much that way, and Michel Therrien's that way. So these guys are all.
He loves everybody. Come on.
Yeah, right. So the reality here, you know, is that, you know, these Maurice, although I admired his honesty in his leaving, I really did not feel bad for him. You know, just from what I'd heard, the stuff I'd heard him do to players over the years. Just
okay.
I just didn't feel bad for him. So anyway, he might be back in New Jersey as I say this. That's one of the names I heard today is Paul Maurice in New Jersey.
I could see it.
I would be surprised. Sorry, I'd be surprised. I'm all choked up by this.
Listen, we know Josh Harris looks for names.
He does,
and he has name recognition.
He does. Maurice definitely.
Bad
people
guy.
are. There is an infatuation with Paul Maurice around the league.
Keep dreaming, Mike.
I mean, don't you think there's an infatuation with Paul Maurice around the league? There's something like people really.
No, I think he's earned a lot of it, Eck. I mean,
There
was a time when Winnipeg was a definite cup contender, and it just didn't happen.
But it hasn't.
He's been a very competent coach. He's been a very competent coach, though.
Had Vancouver not hired Boudreau, you would have heard the rumors of Maurice in Vancouver because of Rutherford. Because Rutherford has hired him 5,000 times, so it probably would have.
Well, but sometimes that means that he knows what not to do too. Like I mean, listen, I don't mean to totally rip apart Paul Maurice, but I just think that his time has passed, and I think New Jersey needs to look to somebody like Quinn.
I don't think Paul Maurice.
I think Dan Quinn. I think not Dan Quinn, but Quinn. I think Quinn would be a
David Quinn. David Quinn would be a good choice.
Would be a good choice for New Jersey.
I don't see. This is the thing. I can't put Paul Maurice in the same category as Lindy Ruff. Paul Maurice is not a dinosaur. His tactics are not dinosaur tactics. I think Lindy is sort of gotten there. He was a great coach in his day, but I never grasped what New Jersey was doing with bringing him in. It didn't make sense as a hire, and I really don't think
Lindy could talk a good game. He's very engaging. You know that,
right? Yeah. So I mean, yes, the David Quinns, the Jim Montgomerys. You know, there's a younger wave of coaches. The Rocky Thompson, who opted out as an assistant coach this year because he was not going to get vaccinated. There are a list of younger coaches.
I still think Luke Richardson, is the guy who deserves a shot. Like there's certain guys.
Yeah, I think Luke Richardson will start to get back into it. I mentioned him a few weeks ago too. I think I've heard little things that
he's got a lot of respect through the league, and it's just like
he does.
And Kevin Dineen, like who's been in and out.
But I think like a Claude Julien might get back in eventually.
Yeah, I mean he's coaching Canada, right? So he's going to be in the Olympics. Right. So yeah, but I think, and then if he we'll see what he does in the Olympics. Claude Julien, again, is that era coach still effective in the NHL? And I'm trying to think of one that is right now. I mean, tell me the one that is right now.
Torts.
Who?
Torts. Torts was effective last year or the year before, like 2 years ago.
Tortorella is your example here.
Yes.
Then
that's a bad example.
Then I win, Mike. I throw it down. I just if that's the best you can come up with, I win because he's not. I mean, you want to say Barry Trotz maybe, but
no. I'm talking about coaches.
Sutter in Calgary maybe.
I'm talking about coaches who are not currently hired. In terms of if you're going to fire your coach, who could you bring in? Torts is still an effective. People will hate him, but he's still an effective coach. Babcock. People will hate him, but he's still an effective coach. Now, that
Torts will get everything he can get out of your team.
Right.
Okay. Exactly. But the question of that is this is the thing, like, and I wish I could come up with a really good metaphor for it. One day, I've thought about this so many times writing this article, but I can't quite get the metaphor straight. But there's something with Torts that, like, he gets so much out of your team, but if your team isn't ready to win the Stanley Cup, he will kill your team eventually.
Right.
And
you know what it is? There was that there was that song, "Don't Pay the Ferryman." Torts is the ferryman.
Krista Berg, thank you.
I get that.
Right, but he's the ferryman. But
He
he's
is
the ferryman. Like, that's it.
And yeah,
if you pay the price, you might get good results. But once you do pay them, eventually you pay for it too.
You're making a deal with the devil, like, and it's like, and your defensemen are going to lose. You just knock a year off their careers, like they're because of all the
maybe two.
It's like putting your army in the command of General Patton. He'll win you battles, but he'll also slap your soldiers around.
This is what we had with Mike Keenan, right? Like Mike Keenan was the same thing. He would go into a place and he would definitely get your team turned around for a while, but he would leave with like insult the earth, on his way out. Like it's like
he would leave,
so the grass would never grow again. Like that. And I mean, Mike Keenan leaving the Rangers, leaving the Flyers, leaving the Blues.
He would leave before.
He left the Rangers in a much more spectacular way than anybody else.
Yeah, he would leave before the parade.
He put the Blues back a decade. I mean, let's just like the reality is, and he wasn't there for that long, but he did. He set them back a decade, and
he hated Gretzky. He hated Gretzky.
Him. So I mean, the crazy thing. So Keenan, yes, he won a Stanley Cup, right? You won a Stanley Cup.
I know the feeling.
But if you don't win a Stanley Cup, man,
I knew you.
If you don't win a Stanley Cup with that, your team is going to suffer for a very long time in a very bad way. And and that's why I think John Tortorella is not the best. Maybe the best older school coach we have going right now is Sutter. Like maybe in Calgary, like he's able to handle the young kids. Sutter just
he's had a dip. They've had a dip in their season too. Let's be real.
They have, and it Laviolette is older school too, but I feel like he's not. I feel like he's not quite like older school like Vigneault, or you feel like he's a little bit younger than those guys, So it's like there's another.
He's not a lot younger, but I get what you're saying.
You know what I mean? It feels like he's the beginning of the new school of coaches in a way. He's like the oldest of the new breed. Which Cooper's the best at, but Laviolette's like the first of that group. There are others too, of course, but
I'll tell you who I think's going to get back in it, Eck, and he's done a good job in Russia, is Bob Hartley. I think Hartley has stayed up with the game where someone like Keenan, he's just too old. It's passed him by and nobody trusts him. But Hartley still has a pretty good rep.
Yeah, he does. And Hartley, and I can see that too. And there's a lot of Bob Hartley support around the NHL. People like him. Like he is definitely one of those guys. He's one of those guys as opposed to Maurice, that he's one of those guys that really no one has a bad word to say about Bob Hartley. And I think that's strong. So
he's still alive in Russia all these years. That's a good sign.
Which is incredible. Dave King, like another one, right? Like who but he's old. So but the reality is like so we're looking at the Devils and the Flyers, perhaps on the verge of making a coaching change.
The Flyers this season, they're not making a coaching
this season.
No way.
Nobody in their right mind is taking over the Flyers.
Again, that's totally wrong, Mike. I'm
not going to talk
absolutely 100%.
I will say this.
Not right now.
I just was on but I was just on serious, and we can't talk about right mind and talk about the Flyers. So forget right mind. I get that part, but I don't think they're going to expend any more resources on a coach. I don't think they're admitting they're out of it, but I don't think they're going to spend any more resources on a coach. That's the issue.
Exactly. It depends. And if they don't, then, the Flyers, as those who grew up with them like me, are dead.
Well, this isn't Ed Snyder's Flyers anymore.
No, but it's not even Ed Snyder's Flyers. We're talking about like,
all right. Here's what I said on Sirius X, and I'm going to get your opinion on this.
Yeah.
But this is where I think is happening. Dave Scott loves the old Flyers. So the fact that Bob Clark mouthed off, that took the heat off of Fletcher. We talked all about that. But then remember, Joe Watson was on Twitter a couple days ago, and he's basically like, get rid of every defenseman except for Ristolainen. Why did he say that? Because Ristolainen is the toughest. They've got to get rid of these guys, and Bill Barber included, out of the management scope. They're older guys with old school feelings, and it doesn't work anymore. That culture is dead with the Flyers, but I don't think it's dead with the owner, because the owner likes those guys.
Right, but there's two different Flyers, Russ. There's two different Flyers.
I need to know what Ed Van Imp thinks, Russ.
The 70s Flyers are like the 70s Flyers, the Broad Street Bullies. That culture is dead. And those guys are too old to be going to for advice, and they're also just because they have a very romanticized version of what happened to them. I mean, as much I'm a Flyers fan, and without Bernie Parent, there are no Stanley Cups. So let's just like put
That's
it
true.
on the line. You know what I mean?
No, that's true.
And I'm a Flyers fan, as you know.
I hated Bernie Parent because he was the best in the game, but he was
enabled
great.
them.
I respected him.
He enabled them to play this ridiculous style. He enabled them to take all these penalties. He enabled them to and because Bernie was that good, he was that good. And the reality is he was just, he's in my opinion, one of the top 10 goalies of all time. So
yeah, I agree.
But at the end of the day, that Flyers is dead. But the '80s Flyers,
Tim Kerr, Brian
is Tim Kerr, Brian Propp, and Dave Poulin and Rick Tocchet. Those guys are not dead, and that's why I do believe that Tocchet is the answer. And I think, and I do know that Scott does like you say, there are different people at Comcast, and I talk to a bunch of different people at Comcast because I have a lot of connections in it.
There's no question Scott likes the old guys, though, right? No,
he loves the old guys, and he's no question. I think that he's pushing for Tocchet, but the question is, if Fletcher doesn't do it soon, Fletcher could be in trouble. I really feel that. I really feel that because if Tocchet goes to New Jersey, look out. Like there's trouble, And also remember, there's another team.
But let's bring this up realistically. Why would Fletcher not do it? He did everything Dave Scott wanted them to do over the summer. He's going to do what they say to keep his job. He will.
He traditionally has that has been Fletcher's downfall in Minnesota. He does what he's told to do. But he in Minnesota, like in Philly, he was given a lot of leeway to put himself into a pretty big hole before that. And now that he's in this big hole that he's in, he will do what he's told to do to survive. He's a survival coach for sure. He's a survival GM for sure. But I could see, the ex
but there's
the ex LA Kings GM, which I can't think of his name right now.
Dean Lombardi.
Yeah, I could see Lombardi.
Yeah.
And Tocchet. I could see that as a way the Flyers go. I don't want to know because I talked to somebody at Comcast who told me how many calls and letters and emails, not letters, emails, calls and emails they're getting about Rick Tocchet, and it's just astonishing how much
again, I imagine that's true.
Yeah.
But how many did they get from the Kate Smith thing too? But if they were winning, people would have forgiven the Kate Smith statue thing. They're not winning, so that's why they're getting all these.
Well, the Kate Smith
thing,
that Kate Smith thing was like a political thing, for sure wrong.
But this is these are fan-driven things.
The team sucks, Russ. This is a different thing. This is the actual.
But you don't hire a coach. But you don't hire a coach based on what the fans want. You don't do that.
No, but you don't do that. But you do have a certain amount of And I hate that I'm on this, but I'll tell you another team that Tocchet could end up on.
By the way, let's go with this. Does Tocchet seem like he's in a rush to coach the Flyers? Right. It doesn't seem that way to me.
This is my point. The point I'm making.
You can't say everything about that. I know about that.
Right, but okay. The point I'm making about Tocchet is, he's got a contract with who? TNT, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
ESPN, but he's doing the TNT stuff.
Right, I'm sure he's got an out in that, in case he wants to coach someplace else.
Oh, no question, they all do.
Of course.
But okay, why? Right now, when this is it's a tire fire, let's just say that. Why would you come in? You can come in at the beginning of next year with a clean slate rather than come in and inherit a team that's a cluster F right now. Why would you want to do it? Plus, from the Flyers perspective,
you're not a wimp, man. It's like Tocchet is
being a wimp.
It's like Tocchet isn't afraid of. Do you think Tocchet's afraid of that? Tocchet is not the guy who's going to come in and be like, "Oh, the team sucks. I don't want to take over a team that sucks." Tocchet doesn't think that way. Kevin Allen
he should fear it because this roster is playing exactly the same for two completely different coaches right now.
He coached the Arizona Coyotes, Russ. I mean, it's
right, and the Flyers are playing like the Coyotes, so why would you want that again?
They have more talent than they had on the Coyotes. I mean, he's got talent here that he could do something with.
Oh, the Arizona Coyotes with no expectations. He comes in,
correct,
pressure's on immediately. So why not? Why not wait until after they potentially trade Giroux, after they potentially trade Ristolainen?
Yeah, why would he come in before all that?
After
Doesn't
they
make
finish
sense.
Because here's the
bottom
thing:
five.
Tocchet is the kind of coach who we all know is a pretty good coach. He's got talent. He's definitely one of those guys that people are going to talk to.
Yeah,
He's gonna be
nobody's
interviewed.
saying he doesn't.
He's going to be interviewed as a coach, but there will be a point at which Tocchet will get an offer from somebody else. And
so what?
And no, to him, there just like players want to play certain places, coaches want to coach certain places. And if that place is New Jersey, can you imagine the reaction from Flyers fans if Mike Yao is still coaching this team and
like
Tocchet comes in with the
Hextall in
Devils?
Pittsburgh? I don't think it's going to be that great of a reaction.
Do you really think that
Oh no, it is.
You really think that New Jersey is going to offer more money to Rick Tocchet than the Flyers will?
It's not a matter of money, Mike. It's a matter of, will do the Flyers offer Tocchet a job? Like, it's a matter of like, and as a coach, Tocchet, although we think he was a good coach, coaches have to keep coaching. Like, the longer he's not hired, the worse it gets for him. Like, he's got to keep coaching. He could sit there and say, he's not making a conscious decision to be an analyst. That's not what he's doing.
That's 1 year.
But that's not what he's doing. And it's like, just like for the same reason we saw Tortorella get in and out of that job, when they get a chance to coach, they coach. No matter how bad the team is, they coach, because there's only 32 NHL head coaching jobs. And if one of them is a team that you really consider, like, Tocchet considers himself a Flyer and a Penguin through and through, right? That's what he does. The Penguins aren't going to hire a coach because they've got the best coach in the league. So, Tocchet, I think the coach of the year this year, at least. So the reality is,
I think you're probably right.
Yeah. And if the Flyers are going to suck, if they're going to be like this and the fans are going to be apathetic in a way that I haven't seen since like the year that they traded Forsberg to the Predators. If they trade Giroux, you're talking about a situation where apathy will be unbelievable in the city, and the only excitement you can get is probably from doing something like this.
Right, but again, my point is, from the perspective of the coach and the organization, this year, I'm not saying it's over that they tank, but I'm saying it's over because they've dug themselves such a hole.
Oh, it's over, Mike. There's no question that it's over. Let's just throw that out of the window. It doesn't matter that it's over.
But there's no
people who compare Hextall to Tocchet. It's just Hextall was here.
But there's no turning this around this year.
There is no turning around this year, but there is also no point in not starting to turn things around, not starting to play better hockey, not starting to build a better culture.
But can I say something that's relevant? It's going to be hard for them to make the playoffs next year.
It is. And,
this isn't just a 1 year thing.
It's not just a 1 year thing. So therefore, you start this process of playing the right way as soon as possible. You start this process of getting the players to respect the coach as soon as possible.
Start the turnaround on April 30th, the day after the regular season, when you fire.
Yeah, I think Tocchet stays away from the Giroux stuff, because if they really did trade Giroux, why would he want to be the coach when that happens and have to talk about it?
It taints him, is what it is.
If he's offered the job, I 150% guarantee you he takes it. Whether Giroux, whether they've lost 20 games in a row, whether they've traded Giroux, and
we'll see if they put those odds up on the board.
I'm telling you, a player with a passion for a team like him, who wants to come back to a city like this, that will happen, and to a fan base who absolutely is also hitting him up on Twitter all the time. Like, there's things. This Hextall to Pittsburgh is your GM that you had here that you didn't necessarily like. Going to the Penguins is one thing. This Tocchet's never been here. It's a different thing to bring if Tocchet ends up in New Jersey when he could have been here. If Tocchet comes here and fails, fine. But if they don't give Tocchet a chance here and they let him go to New Jersey, where he could really, that Devils team has the possibility of succeeding in the next couple of years, and he could really become that.
Tocchet's the same as Bill Barber was as a coach?
I don't think so at all. I don't think so at all. The difference, Tocchet, people have way more respect for Tocchet than they had for Bill Barber. Just because of the way, nothing against Bill Barber, but he was a soft player.
No, but he wasn't a good coach. Like, we know that.
He wasn't a good coach. Okay, so
there is a chance Giroux gets traded.
We'll
we got to talk Leafs Rangers.
We will talk Leafs Rangers. I'm sorry, but this I just think the reason I bring this up is I think that something's going to happen with New Jersey quickly, and I think that could very much play into what happens with the Flyers quickly.
Yeah. I don't know. There's no connection between Tom Fitzgerald and Tocchet. So Tom Fitzgerald and who's the GM of the Devils.
Yeah,
I could see I could see a Quinn. I could see, because he's somebody who would probably work with a younger team. I could see that for sure. But Tocchet, it doesn't add up.
Tocchet is considered a good coach who can get something from something out of nothing without taking years off your players' lives. Like that's the difference. Like
where's the Leafs talk on this show?
Yeah, let's talk about that.
I'm anxious to talk about the Leafs.
All right, let's talk about the Leafs go up 3-1 against the Rangers last night. Things are flying, things are going well, and then we once again see why the Rangers are going to win the Stanley Cup, as I've said so many times. They just dominate the rest of the game.
Russ?
Thoughts?
Okay, so my initial thoughts were, and I told Mike this, when it was a 3-2 game, I thought the Leafs were in trouble, and I'll tell you why. I felt like Adam Fox was starting to get more of a grip on the game. I also felt like Shesterkin had given up too many rebounds early, and I've watched him in games where he can get that under control. Like, for whatever reason, if he's not locked in early, he will give up some rebounds, and I think the Leafs took full advantage of all of that, Michael Bunting especially. And so that was a good part of the game. It definitely hurt the Leafs when the goal came off the board for Matthews, but it was a kicking motion, so that is the way it is. But really, Shesterkin. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and this is what's so effed up about the NHL, because at the beginning of the year, that was a goal, because they said, well, if it's not I've seen it. I saw it in 3 or 4 games where a player turned his skate and motioned it, and they called it a goal. And now all of a sudden they call it a no goal. They should have called it a goal in the first place. I thought it was a kicking motion. I thought there was no way it was going to be counted a goal.
That's a good point. No, you're right about that.
Yeah, I think that I think that this rule's always been very confusing, and I don't think it's changed from the beginning of the year till now. I think that what we have is we see a cyclical thing of this rule. Like, this rule goes in cyclical ways. I mean, at the end of the day, walking is a kicking motion, so the idea of a kick,
but here's my
it just is.
Here's my biggest pet peeve of the game, and I just heard Shane O'Brien say it on Sirius XM, and that is the belief that the Leafs lost this game, it was theirs for the taking, and gave it to the Rangers is always what comes out of Toronto when they have a lead and lose it. Sometimes the other team fights back and wins for a reason. Like, the Rangers are playing hot right now. Chris Kreider, that goal by Chris Kreider is one of the best goals he scored all year, and that really fired him up. Well, yes, the Leafs made mistakes. There's no question, but it's not always about the Leafs screwing up as to why they lose a game like this. It's not.
Okay. Did the Rangers deserve to win that game? For sure. Did the Rangers play well? Yes. The Leafs, for the 4th time in 5 games during this road trip, was up multiple goals. And I wrote today in my piece in Hockey Buzz that since December the 1st, since that hot month that they won everything, they've gone back to that fast and loose offensive mentality, happy-go-lucky, screw the defense. Let's just outscore the team 6-5.
You're right.
And the problem is that, Jack Campbell needs a team that plays a solid defensive game in front of him. He's a good goaltender. I don't think he's a great goaltender. And they need the forwards to help out what I consider an average defensive core. And last night against the Rangers, you had Jake Muzzin out with a concussion, Justin Hall in quarantine in Arizona. You had Timothy Liljegren.
But he stinks anyhow, so that doesn't matter.
Let me finish.
Yeah, he's probably going to be traded.
Yeah, Timothy Liljegren and Rasmus Sandin, who I think are 2 good young players, playing the number 3 and number 4 slot, which they're not ready for. You had Brody and Riley playing 25 minutes, and you had potentially one of the worst bottom pairings in the friggin' NHL with Alex Biega and Travis Dermott, who were on the ice for 3 goals last night. And
Gallant took advantage of that, no question about it.
Gallant waited until Riley and Brody got off the ice, and then he put in his top 2 lines. my whole point on this is, and this has been my mantra for 3 or 4 years, until this team gets another top 4 defenseman to play with Muzzin along with Brody and Riley, they will go nowhere. And if I hear any rumor about the Leafs going after a forward, you're a friggin' idiot, because it's not the case. Not happening.
Look, I agree they could use that defenseman, and it will be hard to get. And Mike and I talked about this off air. It's going to be hard to get.
It is going to be hard to get. Not impossible.
And look, the Ryan Reeves goals were fortuitous. But they left him alone in the crease the one time. That's on them. That's you can't leave even Ryan Reeves alone. He's got a good shot.
Liljegren gave up those on the Adam Fox goal.
Yeah.
Yes. But the other thing is, and again, there's going to be a point where people start looking at Sheldon Keefe. He's saying the right things, but the players are not doing the right things.
Yeah.
Well,
and if he goes through
yesterday, Russ, and he's taken a little bit of criticism for this. Some people thought he went a little over the top by saying that the team is soft and was playing, irresponsible defensively. They were. I'm sorry. You call a spade a spade.
He's right, but he was also outcoached. He was also outcoached by Gallant in a huge way.
He was outcoached. There's no question.
Well, he was at a disadvantage, like I said, because he was playing with basically, I'd say 3 NHL defensemen, 1 borderline, and 2 guys who shouldn't be in the league. So,
but this year, that's always the case, and in different situations, right? And that's why we're seeing
power play goal from Mitch
coaching this year matters more than it's ever mattered before. Like, coaching matters more than
Mitch Marner got a power play goal first time in 114 games.
Yeah.
I know that's to me, the problem
that's an unbelievable stat.
Is an incredible stat. The problem with the Leafs, and I watch them because they're one of my favorite teams, honestly, and they really are. We talk about them a lot here, so maybe I've just grown to like them, but I follow them closely.
Why are they are not one of your favorite teams?
No, they honestly are. Have you not noticed? Have you not noticed?
Wait. Okay, I'm going to go through a list. Do you like them more than the Flyers?
No.
Okay. Do you like them more than Nashville?
No.
Okay. I still bet they're like 4th or 5th on your list. That's my guess.
That's one of my favorite teams. If you're in the top 5, you're one of my favorite teams. I think they're our top 5. I think that they're behind Nashville, Philly, and Montreal probably. But
all right, Montreal
and Florida, I would say right now, because I'm really like watching Florida. But that there's always a couple teams in there. But at the same time, the thing is this: like that team's mentally is just not there yet. And when you watch this game, you get really frustrated by the fact that you say they blow these leads, Mike. And what I get the sense of is that they still play with this nervous energy where they get a lead and they're like, "Phew, we have a lead," and they relax because they're like they work hard to get that lead, and then they're like.
And then
they feel that immense pressure come off them because we're playing well, we're winning the game.
No,
they're not finishing the game. They're stopping it at that point, and then other teams just take advantage of it.
I think what it is, Eck, is the fact that the team, as currently constructed, really, unless there's a 5-man buy-in on the on the ice, they're not capable of shutting down other teams.
No, they're not.
Right.
That's true.
There's no way. You're right. I mean that's and they are not built to be a shutdown team though. They are built. They have all this firepower up front. They are built to outscore you. But the question is, when you outscore someone, you have to keep playing. Like if you get a 3-1 lead, you got to keep the pedal down because.
The problem here is you can't continue. I'll use the Stratomatic example. When you're up 4-1, you can't play a 3-3. You can't play wide open offense because that's what the other team wants. They want to trade offensive chances.
I get that.
What about your 4th line, Mike? What happened to getting points from that great 4th line?
And when you're that's
evaporated.
But to stay with Stratomatic, Mike, you're also not going into a 2-1 or a 1-0. You're going to like 3-2 or a 2-2 at least because you should be able to outplay anybody offensively.
Well,
in a battle between you have enough skill that you should be able to skate with and score with anybody.
My point is that the teams that win, like Pittsburgh, like Chicago, like LA, and like Tampa, they can play two-way hockey. They learned to shut it down, or they got the players that were capable of playing two-way hockey. Tampa Bay lost to Columbus, then they went out and got Coleman and got Barclay Goodrow,
right, and they did, yeah,
and won a Stanley Cup because they could play dirty, snot-nosed hockey.
I mean, you always have to be able to shut it down. You always have to be able to keep that one goal lead at the end of games. You're also not going to be able to win a Stanley Cup. That's for sure. I get that. But at the same time, the thing that Pittsburgh did when Pittsburgh's not a great shutdown team either. But when Pittsburgh had their success, it was because they made you start taking chances, and they jumped on those. Like they jumped all over that offensively. They jumped on, like, Pittsburgh has more 2-on-1s and 3-on-2s over the last several years than anybody in NHL history. That's the Penguins game. The Penguins are, like I said many times, are at their best a counterattack team with the great offense, and they love to counter you. And the Leafs do not seem to know how to counterattack. Like they don't. They seem to just, they either attack or they play bad defense.
No, but okay, but you don't want to counterattack when you're up 4-1. You want to
absolutely do
down.
Because the other teams are taking chances when you're up 4-1, and that gives you, with your skill, all kinds of opportunities for breaks the other way. You have to still keep scoring goals.
I have another Leafs point that was there at the beginning of the year, and it hasn't gone away. Okay. So right now, Cale Makar has fought the entire Leafs defense.
Yeah.
The Leafs defense does not score.
They don't score.
They don't. And I don't know. And Mike has to tell me, is that a function of Kyle Dubas or is that a function of Sheldon Keefe? Because it's one of them is at fault.
Well, I mean, their top defenseman is scoring very well. Morgan Riley's got 30.
Right. That's one guy.
Right. Well,
one guy.
Right. And
TJ Brody is largely an offensive defenseman too. He's got 3 goals.
No, but TJ Brody, his dynamic is to basically stay back while Morgan Riley jumps into the rush. He's the defensive.
Okay, so then
shouldn't be,
you
Mike.
don't have any other offense. They need somebody else desperately who could score goals.
Plus,
they need Brody on the second line as the offensive defenseman, not being the defensive player.
You're not getting points out of Muzzin.
At that point in his career that he's not good enough to do that anymore.
Okay.
So
that's a problem with the Leafs. They are not getting enough offense from their defense. They are not.
Well, I mean, and
one guy is not enough.
Well, I mean, they only use one defenseman on their power play. Rasmus Sandin is the defenseman on the second power play, and he's young, so he's not going to produce a ton of points right now. I mean,
but 5-on-5, it doesn't have to be on the power play. I'm not going to rip their power play.
Would they like more scoring out of their defense? Sure, but I think right now their problem is their defense has to concentrate on playing defense. And that's
okay, but Mike, this is 2 years running now. This is 2 years running that it's been like this, that they don't have much.
Well, Russ, when they went out and got a defenseman who was offensive minded, it turned out to be a disaster because his name was Tyson Barrie.
He was.
That doesn't mean you never try to do that again.
But they need defensemen. They need defensemen who can play defense. Like I'm telling you, they're not going out.
Right, but if you bring in another guy, let's just take this. Here's the hypothetical. If they get your top 4 guy and he plays more defense, if Morgan Riley doesn't have a good playoffs, you're getting nothing out of your entire defense for offense.
They're not going out at the deadline and trading for John Klingberg. They're going out at the deadline.
I'm not saying they should trade for Klingberg, but I'm saying if they had Chychrun would solve the problem.
Oh, sure. I mean, but you'd have to give up Nylander to get him or something. Somebody like that.
I would say
that.
I mean, I know they need offense, but I would even look at a Justin Braun help them defensively.
Oh my God! See, Justin Braun is a bottom pairing guy on that team. They need a top 4 defenseman like a Manson, like a Ristolainen to play with Muzzin, and that improves their depth going down. Justin Braun replaces Zach Bogosian. It's not the answer.
No, he's better than Zach Bogosian.
He's better. He's more.
I had this argument with Mike.
Zach Bogosian.
I'm saying he replaces Zach Bogosian.
And he blocks shots, a lot of them.
Blocks a lot of shots. He helps. He plays well with, he could be with Morgan Riley. That's the kind of player you need to play. Who's a smart guy who can pick up guys. You don't need Brody, who's not the greatest defensive defenseman, playing that role. You know,
Heck,
like that doesn't make any sense.
Heck, honestly, the pairing of Riley and Brody, that's not broken. Brody has been the best compliment to Morgan Riley since Morgan Riley came to the NHL.
Oh, for sure. But
it's a
that's
great
not saying
defense.
much either, Mike. You know, like Morgan Riley has not had many good compliments there.
Well,
there are better players out there that play that.
I'm saying he's a very good defenseman, and him and Riley is not the problem. The problem is you've got Justin Hall on your second pairing, which is not a solution. Muzzin is not getting any younger. You've got young defensemen who I think are better suited to play bottom pairing minutes right now. You need a top 4 defenseman, and it doesn't mean go out and because Justin Braun is not a top 4 defenseman on any team.
But he can play the part. But my point is also he's only 2 points. He's only 2 points behind TJ Brody for points. That's how bad TJ Brody is offensively these days.
No, Russ, that's not his role. His role is
it used to be his game.
Not anymore.
So you're going to basically tell me. So why
but,
isn't it? Hold on. Why isn't it his role? It's because of the coach then.
Yeah.
No, it's because they want Morgan Riley to activate offensively. They don't want TJ.
Who's they? It's the coach. The coach wants that.
There's a lot of players that could activate Morgan Riley offensively.
Right.
Doesn't have to be one of your better offensive players.
But Brody is not one of their better offensive players.
But that's like a chicken or egg thing, Mike. Like, is he not one of the better offensive players because of where he's playing now, or because he's playing better offensively?
They brought him in to play with Riley, and that pairing has been great. So why mess up something that's working? The problem is that your second pairing is not working because
that's why, because you're
trying to make one good pairing. Here's why. I'll give you a reason why. Because you're trying to make the whole group better. Yeah. It's not about maintaining that really good first pairing. It's about making the whole group better.
And Russ, they don't have anybody to play with Riley if they put Brody with Muzzin. They tried that. It didn't work.
I think you can get the guy who can play with Riley. I think you can get that guy.
I agree with that. Well, you probably can get that guy in just that role.
My suggestion was that, because Brody played with Giordano in Calgary for years, that the Leafs could be in on Giordano. He's a Toronto native. He's a rental guy.
Yeah.
Now that would make sense, because then Riley would have to move to the right side to play with Muzzin, but that's you probably could ask him to do that for a short-term thing. But the problem is that you have to get a top 4 defenseman, and Russ is right. It's not going to be easy, but it's not Justin Braun. It's not Colin Miller.
But you don't need a top 4 defenseman to play with Riley, even though he's playing top 4 minutes.
That's true.
Yes, you do. I think you do.
No, because you've seen it all around the league. You've seen it for years that if you get the right guy, who was it that played with Pronger back? Matt Carl, right? Matt Carl wasn't a top 4 defenseman, but he played top 4 minutes.
Yeah, Yaro Spacek played with him at Edmonton. Yeah, well, great.
But those guys, if you get the right guy, who's smart and knows how to cover for a guy who's taking offensive chances, which is what Justin Braun is, and what he's done in Philly actually pretty well.
You have to get ready for the Flyers game. I was just going to mention to the chat room. For me, Shane Wright's still number 1. Miro is a very good player. They're asking about the Russian. The issue with him is, and I got this straight from a great source, is he's not playing in the KHL because he's not committing to a full all-round two-way game. Yeah. And that's very Kravtsov-like, and so that's a little bit of a worry right now.
Yeah.
He's got great offense. There's no question.
I mean, we'll get into way more of this. It's a really good discussion. It's really interesting. I think we're going to solve the problems here eventually for the Leafs. I think eventually we'll all figure it out.
We might solve the problems, but the Leafs might not.
We'll hire it. The last thing I'll say about the Leafs, I feel like there's no connection between the defense and offense at all. When I watched that game last night, the defense, it's not like they're whatever the opposite of playing a 5-man unit is, they're doing that. They're playing a 3. Go ahead, Russ. But don't you think that's true?
Please.
All right.
See you later, guys. Take care, Russ.
My God.
You don't agree with that, Mike?
No.
All right.
Their problems have been blue line related for years.
Yeah, but that comes from not playing as a 5-man unit. The 5-man unit.
For you to allow them their offensive weapons to perform at the level that they can, you have to have a defense that can allow them to do that. They have an average defense and above average offense, and when the offense goes out and tries to score and the defense is back there, the defense isn't good enough to cover for them. They need to be good enough. Jake Gardner. There's Funky. There's the name. Mr. -5 in the friggin' playoffs.
Where have you gone, Thomas Caverly? All right. That's all the time we have for today. But there you have it. Byfield tonight. Thomas is saying in the chat room.
Yes.
I'm really happy for that kid. I mean, in the game he got hurt, I watched that game and I was like, this kid's coming along really well. I felt like he was just on the verge of doing something, and he gets terribly hurt. So let's see what happens with him back, and hopefully he doesn't play Hainsey. Remember, folks, without the buzz, it is just hockey, and we appreciate it. We'll talk to you later. Talk to you all soon. Enjoy the games tonight. Lots of games.